Hello, how are you? Today, inshallah, we will start with chapter 16, lesson 3. Darwin presents his case. In this lecture, we need to check up what's the main proposal of the Darwin. For my objectives today, I need you to describe the conditions under which natural selection occurred and explain the principle of common descent. The first part, which is evolution by natural selection. We need to check the evolution by the natural selection mechanism. We are talking about the natural, not the artificial. Under what condition does natural selection occur? The answer is natural selections occur in any situation in which more individuals are born than can survive, which is the struggle for existence. There is a natural heritable variation, which is the variation and adaptation, and there is variable fitness among individuals, which is the survival of fitness. So the struggle for existence, variation and adaptation, survival of the fitness, which is the ways that the natural selection will affect the evolution. Let's start with the struggle for existence. So after reading Malthus, Darwin realized that if more individuals are produced than can survive, members of a population must compete to obtain food, to obtain living space, and other limited necessities of life. And Darwin described this as the struggle for existence. There is a competition for the food, competition for the living space, and other limited necessities of life. So this is the struggle for existence. And he knew that individuals have natural variation among their heritable traits, and he hypothesized that some of those variants are better suited to the life in their environment than others. An heritable characteristic that increases an organism's ability to survive and reproduce in its environment is called adaptation. So, adaptation means that any heritable characteristics that increases an organism's ability to survive and reproduce in its environment is called adaptation. So, we have two ideas here: variation among the population and adaptation. And also, adaptation can involve body parts or structures. As an examples of adaptations, we have camouflage, mimicry, and physiological adaptation. Let's start with a scorpion fish example, which is an example of the camouflage adaptation, which is a color. An adaptation that allows an organism to blend into its background and avoid predation, which is again scorpion fish coloring, which is a camouflage example. Many adaptation also involves behaviors, not just the structures, it's also the behaviors, like complex avoidance strategies per species use. So again, behavior, which is complex avoidance strategies per species use. Like an example, a crane will display defensive behavior in an effort to scare off an approaching fox. So this is a behavioral adaptation and strategies. The second part of the Darwin case is survival of the fittest. So according to Darwin, differences in adaptations affect an individual fitness. Okay? Fitness, which is describe how well an organism can survive and reproduce in its environment. Again, fitness is describe how well an organism can survive and reproduce in its environment. So individuals with adaptations that are well suited to their environment can survive and reproduce and are said to have high fitness compared to others that don't have or not well suited to their environment, which we call them low fitness or organisms with low fitness. This difference in rate of survival and reproduction is called survival of the fittest. So survival of the fittest in evolutionary term means survival, reproducing and passing adaptation on to the next generation. Natural selection, which is the second part of our lesson. What we mean by natural selection, which is the process by which organisms with the variations most suited to their local environment survive and leave more offsprings. And Darwin named his mechanism for evolution natural selection because it is similarities to artificial selection. So artificial selection is made by man-made, okay? But while natural selection is by the environment itself or by the organism itself. In natural selection, the environment, not a farmer or animal breeder, influences fitness. The environment, not the farmer or the breeder. And will adapted individual survive and reproduce more than other individuals in the environment. For generation to generation, population continue to change as they become better adapted or as their environment changes. And natural selection acts only on inherited traits. Why just on inherited traits? Because it will pass from one generation to another. Look at this hypothetical population. The first picture here shows the struggle for existence, because as you can see here, all of these grasshoppers change over the time as a result of natural selection. So look at the shapes, most of them green, two of them yellow, and at the same time the grasshoppers lay a huge amount of eggs to produce many grasshoppers. The fittest will survive. What do you mean by fittest will survive? That the best fit to the environment will stay survive. How we can apply this concept on this picture? As you can see in the next picture, which is variation and adaptation, certain variation called adaptation increase an individual chances of surviving and reproducing. Here we have two colors for the grasshoppers, the yellow and the green. The yellow will be easier for another organism to eat, while the green is, or the color of the green color will be harder to the other organisms to eat because it's a like of a camouflage, okay? Green color is an adaptation, so the green grasshopper blends into their environment and so are less visible to predator. So the yellow are more exposed to the predator. That means the number of the yellow grasshopper will decrease. Because their color serves as a camouflage adaptation, green grasshoppers have higher fitness and so survive and reproduce more often than yellow grasshopper. So the survivor here for the fittest, which is the green, compared to the yellow, which is decrease in the growth. So the more common here is the green grasshopper. This is how the natural selection happens and how the fittest will stay or will adapt more to the environment. Let's now move to the common descendant. What we mean by common descendant, and what does Darwin mechanism for evolution suggest about living and existence of species? According to the principle of common descendant, all species living and extinct are descended from ancient common ancestor. Again, according to the principle of common descent, all species living and extinct are descended from ancient common ancestor. So natural selection depends on the ability of organism to reproduce and leave descendants. So Darwin proposed that over many generations, adaptation could cause successful species to evolve into new species. And he also proposed that living organisms or living species are descended with modification from common ancestors, and the idea is called descent from or descent with modification. So descent with modification, which is the living species which are descended from another common ancestor after modification. According to the principle of common descent, all species living and extinct are descended from ancient common ancestor, which is the common descent theory by Darwin. And he based his explanation for the diversity of life on the idea that species change over time. A single tree of life link all living things, as you can see here in the picture. And the lecture is finished. Thank you and have a nice day.